Too bad when you forget your props, you know. We'll get to this later, but I wanted to not forget it. So I'll put this over here. No cheating, okay? Can't see it yet. All right. This week we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to actually listen to a youth message. In a way. I modified it, okay? I didn't make it like super boring, all right? But we're in this series called Free People over there with our teens. And I said, Mark kind of gave me this idea. He said, preach whatever you want to preach. Well, I don't know about y'all. That's a scary thing to say. Preach whatever you want to preach. Okay, Mark. I mean, you asked me to. No. I said, why don't I give you a little taste of what we do over there? And so we're in this series, Free People. And I had this one week that I had written, but I didn't really have a place for it because of time crunch and schedule and stuff like that. And I said, you know what? Instead of throwing that out, why don't I use that? Why don't I share it with y'all? Especially when it has a lot to do with you. So this whole series is really about this. God did not put rules on us. He made us free people. Now, I know at first that can sound controversial, so just give me a minute. You see, God didn't say, you have to do this, this, and this. He said it would be best if you did this, this, and this. Because you would gain freedom in that. If you had to do it, well, you wouldn't be able to sin, right? If you had to do it. He gives you that choice. But the truth is, when you choose His path, you find freedom in His path. Okay, so that's the basis of it. So now that we're all caught up, this week is about every man for himself. Who's ever heard that? Every man for himself. Okay, a few people, right? Like, that's pretty obvious. Like, everybody's heard that. And I bet you know what it means. When I hear that phrase, I can't help but imagine, like, elementary school kids playing musical chairs. I don't know about y'all, but I've never seen so many elbows, punches thrown in my life than watching elementary-age kids play musical chairs. I mean, they're just vicious. I mean, it's like watching full-grown adults. And the worst part is they're not getting anything for it. They're just happy to do it. They're fighting for bragging rights. But it's every man for himself. What about Black Friday? That's a good one, right? Black Friday. Oh, my goodness. You just had this nice, wonderful meal in your stomach. Why don't we go and fight with people at Walmart for a TV? Doesn't that sound like a great idea? What? Come on. Yeah, or a toaster oven. Like, come on, y'all. It's great because they put a little compilation on the news like the next day of the 10 worst, whatever fights on Black Friday. It's like, come on, you guys. Is it really that important? Like, is a toaster oven really that important? Probably not. In fact, that's actually one of my family's favorite pastimes. I don't know if y'all do this or not. If you don't, it's well worth going and doing. Just find you a bench somewhere at the mall. Just go sit down and relax. Sit back and watch the festivities. Oh, man. It's every man for himself. It's bonkers, right? We all know what it feels like to be in that every man for himself situation. Or every woman for herself. It's either game musical chairs, a TV on Black Friday, but in lots of ways, it feels like an every man for himself situation. And to help you think about it, let me give you some more that maybe equate to your life. Teens, I'll start with you first. Maybe, guys, you and your best friend like the same girl. So you go through extreme lengths to get her. Or maybe you fight for seats in the cafeteria, the closest spot to the lunch line. Or maybe it's the guy you're low-key stalking don't know, I'm not saying anything. But adults, what about within your job? How many times can you equate this to your life? Every man for himself. Has there ever been any time that you've caught yourself maybe putting down a coworker in hopes, just in hopes of maybe, just maybe, getting a promotion? Maybe it's buying a house. Maybe you say, I gotta have a bigger house than so and so. They can't beat me in life. I don't know. I mean, just think about all the times that you find yourself in a situation where you have to be the person on top. You have plenty of opportunities to look for yourself in life, and not a lot of opportunities to look for others. Or do you? And sometimes I even think it's like this. Maybe you're just fending for yourself. Maybe no one else is pulling up for you. Maybe no one else is showing up for you. And you just feel like you're out on this island and that you have to do everything. And that there's no one out there for you. No one out there to care for you. So in Elevate, this past few weeks, we talked about free people. Most of the days we don't feel that way, though. We feel bound to rules and limited by managing our image. And sometimes our own actions and choices limit us. How are we supposed to feel free when we're in a fight all the time? Fight for who's on top. Our place at school, work, home. Are we really free people when we're constantly having to watch our back and look out for ourselves? If we're really free, why are we keeping tabs on what everybody else is doing? Why do we really care? How we measure up and how we rank, is that freedom? Is that living like Jesus asked us to live? Is that living our best life? If we're being honest, sometimes it just feels like we're trapped. It feels like we're being controlled and out of control at the same time. It feels like our lives are small and cramped, constantly trying to keep our place in line, keeping others from walking over us. And it definitely does not feel like freedom. It doesn't. So the truth is this. Over the, like I said, the past couple weeks at Elevate, talking about free people. And we're looking at a book of the Bible that's not actually a book. It's actually a letter. It's Galatians. Paul, who wrote most of the New Testament, he wrote this to the church of Galatia. Now, Paul wrote all of his letters under specific circumstances, right? Circumstances unique to each church. And for Church of Galatia, his reason for writing was he felt just a little bit passionate about. He felt that it was not okay. Well, excuse me, let's step back. First, he started this church, right? And as you can imagine, most people, when you start something, you want to finish it right. You want it to be right. It's your, you can say this one. It's your baby, yeah. That's what this church was to Paul. So Paul was pretty upset when he did this for Jesus, and these new religious leaders walked in and said, oh, but Paul didn't tell you about X, Y, and Z that you have to do. He only told you this part. And so, being Paul, probably not a happy camper. And so, he wrote this letter. See, Paul realized this. God's love and approval was not situational. It was a definite. It was infinite. Still is. This was not something that was dependent on where you were with God. God's love stayed the same. The question is, where is your heart? And so, like I said, here come these people saying, well, you have to do X, Y, and Z to get God's love and to be approved by him. Paul said that that's not the case. In fact, it says in Galatians 5:13, for you have been called to live in freedom, my brothers and sisters. But don't use your freedom to satisfy your sinful nature. Instead, use your freedom to serve one another in love. In other words, your freedom isn't just about you. Your freedom is connected to other people. Paul drives his message of freedom again and again in this letter, and he's determined to make sure the Galatians don't forget this. So then, what are you to do instead? Paul would say to use your freedom to serve one another in love. He goes on, this is Galatians 5:14, he says this, for the whole law can be summed up with this one command. Love your neighbor as yourself. So here's all these people saying, these religious leaders, saying, there's more to this, Paul. You can't just be free. There's rules, there's regulations on God's love. And he says, you say there's more to these laws that I need to obey. I say the whole law is summed up with this. Love your neighbor as yourself. And famous words from who? Anybody? Jesus, yeah. Paul just quotes Jesus and just takes the mic and just drops it. Just walks away. Like, this is it right here, you guys. Love your neighbor as yourself. But Paul wasn't trying to make a point. He really believed the whole law was summed up in this command. Because what? Jesus said it. Paul goes on to say this in Galatians 5:15. But if you are always biting and devouring one another, watch out. Beware of destroying one another. And this right here is what really depicts today's sermon. I want to read it one more time. But if you are always biting and devouring one another, watch out. Beware of destroying one another. See, there's more on the line than just freedom. It's not just your health. It's the people around you and their health, their happiness, their joy, their peace is at stake based on your actions. But the truth is, when we live that every man for himself lifestyle, this is what ends up happening. We begin to devour one another. Slowly but surely. So the truth is, the choice is yours. You can use your love to hurt people, you can use your use your freedom. Words, right? Can you use your freedom to do two things? Love people or hate people. Paul says this, to stand on God's word, stand on Jesus' word, and love your neighbor as yourself. You may be free to tear down one another, but the truth is it also tears you down in the process. And the truth is it's not without consequence. Everything you do has a consequence, good or bad. What about your relationships? What about your family? What are you sacrificing? What are you putting on the line? What's destroying your life? Is it this? Is it an every man for yourself situation? Are you putting others down to make you look better? Is it job promotion? You name it. What is it that is going on in your life that is destroying others and in the process destroying yourself. The truth is, we don't want to live in a world where no one looks out for each other. I would think that's a pretty universal thing. I feel like I could go almost across the entire world and say, do you want somebody to love you? And most likely the answer 9 times out of 10 is going to be yes. That'd be a very, very sad world to live in. So this is not something where it's odd. Like, this is normal. But yet we're so okay living this type of life. So what about this? So if my freedom is connected to putting others first, instead of fending for myself, how can I fend for someone else? Now, maybe that feels impossible or illogical, because it does go against like everything our instincts say. Our instincts do say, hey, live for you, you're number one, right? It's kind of what the world says too, because we're number one. And so this does feel very awkward and weird, and it feels backwards. But that's why Paul says living this kind of life is what Jesus asked. And if we go back to what Jesus, his whole entire message was completely opposite of the world. And so this trend just continues and continues. And he says, if you want freedom, real freedom, let me emphasize that, real freedom, love your neighbor as yourself. Freedom from the drive to be perfect by following all the rules. We talked about that in week 1. We talked about freedom from trying to win the approval of others. We talked about freedom from the fear of consequences. And then here today, we're talking about freedom from fighting for our rights and putting others first. So, this is going to sound really heavy, and it's going to hurt somebody's feelings. But it's got to be said. Let them cut in line. It's okay. I know that was really rough, wasn't it? That's really sad. Let them cut in line. It's okay. For teens on the sports field, or maybe it's co-ed softball, I don't know. It's okay for somebody to shine a little brighter than you. It's okay. Let somebody else get promoted before you. Your time will come. It's okay. Let them get a better spot in the movie theater. It's okay. The truth is this. Let them have what they need, because we already have what we need. In other words, we're ultimately saying this. This is also what Paul said. He said this: free people put others first. Loving others is what matters. And loving others will lead to freedom. So now, this big picture. I dropped this once, so it's got tape on it, in case you're wondering. And if you weren't, now you know. This picture, I guess I'll remove this. I want to keep this forefront, at least, for the rest of the time. This picture was a gift to me. Being a minister, living in another church is kind of hard. And so, leaving Galilee was, especially being there, 12 years, was the hardest thing I've ever done. Asking God, like, are you sure? Are you sure it's okay to leave? Are you sure? And I remember Brian called me up one night, and he said, Tyler, he said, what you're doing is okay. What you're doing is growing. And he talked about how he had a sermon this week prepared for me. And I was like, you really don't have to do that, Brian. You know, you can just tell me I don't need to be talked about in church. I'm okay with that. But he did. And as a minister, you know that if you don't know this, because most of y'all are not ministers, but there lots of times we like to have series set in time and set different ways, and we want to have certain things done. We want to get things done on time, and like, for example, during Christmas, you have a certain amount of series, like, I want to dedicate this to Christmas, and Thanksgiving. I want to dedicate this to Thanksgiving. And so Brian was doing his Christmas series, and he took a break for me. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but as a minister, I recognize that he said, Tyler, today's about you. And so this is what they did without me knowing. He took all these pictures from my 12 years, and he said, Tyler, I want to give this to you. I want to tell you how to be better at your job, in a good way, of course. I want to teach you one more time how to love. And that whole day was dedicated to me. And to me, that changed my life. That changed my life. I said, that's what love is. Sacrifice. That's what love is. Coming around someone when they need guidance. And this is just a small reminder. There's so many comments on here. This is a small reminder of someone else's love to me. And so the question is, can you do this for someone else? Can this happen to someone else? Can you put yourself aside for 2 seconds and just love on someone? Once again, we come back to freedom. I don't know about you, but if you've ever done something for someone, there's some freedom in that. Just loving on someone else. So, that's the application for today. Is what can you do in your life to gain a little bit more freedom from this world? Can you love on someone? Can you send them a thank you note? Can you open the door from someone? Can you just show a little love? I'd like to pray, and as I pray, band, if you ought to come back up and lead us out. Seriously, guys, think about this, though. Something not to take lightly. Free people is a hard topic, and it's something hard to come by. Because we think freedom is something else that it's not. Let's pray.